So, the mission imperative. The second issue is the pastoral imperative. You won't be at all, I hope, surprised that I touch on the pain, particularly within the LGBT community, that the church has caused. Perhaps what is not quite so visible is actually the deaths that it's caused, the depression, the harm, the self-harming. Lizzie Lowe, I'm using her picture with permission. This is a picture that the family released. Many of you may know the terrible story of the fact that sadly she took her own life at the age of 14 back in August 14. I might not have got her age right, perhaps it was, yes, no, she was 14. Because she felt she couldn't reconcile her faith with her burgeoning sexuality. But the real issue was that she felt she couldn't talk to anybody about it. And the church leadership, which she was part of, met with her school leaders afterwards. They really did a lot of soul searching and couldn't understand why she felt that she couldn't have been open with them, because she would have, this is the saddest part, she would have actually received a very affirming response. And they put out a statement to the media saying that they realised that the barrier, if you like, that was just too high. And I would suggest that barrier has been one of silence. I deal with a lot of young LGBT Christians, lesbian and gay, bisexual and transgender. And they have no idea what reception they might get, either from their family or certainly from their church, even if it would be an affirming one. Unless you make it clear that that's where you are, they will assume that you're against them, because the pain of rejection is so normal. And the truth is, we have an extreme epidemic of depression amongst our teenagers, a very large proportion of whom are struggling with sexual identity issues. And the church is the last place they feel they can come to, rather than the first. And I think we have to be honest again that the church has failed many of these youngsters, and not so young. You'll hear some of my own story in a minute, where I too felt that I couldn't be open for the fear of being labelled unsound or emotionally weak. I don't mind being emotionally weak, but the fear of actually talking about the mixture of feelings was just a barrier too high. The church has got a lot to answer for. There's an incredible amount of pain in the community, and that's why I was behind a letter, as many of you again may know, where 100 senior Anglicans joined with me to write to the archbishops, the head of the primates letter meeting, asking if we could acknowledge that pain and apologise for it, which Archbishop Justin very graciously did at the press conference in front of the world's media. And there was a statement within the primates communique about the fact they were so sorry for the pain this has caused. And the truth is, there's an awful lot of anger too. And my concern is that whilst we enter finally into a time of discussion and dialogue, it needs to be done with such graciousness and patience and understanding, because for some this has caused such great scars, which they carry often physically, but certainly emotionally. It's very hard to have a conversation with someone you think has caused you such great pain. So I'm trying to bring two sides together, but I think we need to give each other a lot of space and support as we try and have these communications. And a little plea, I think Leo made this last year, please don't talk about us in front of us. Try and include us, or ensure that actually amongst you here, there will be members, I'm sure, who are struggling with their own sexuality, but you've probably never mentioned that. You've carried that probably all your life. The barrier to talk about it was just too high. And I'm here for you, if that is you. So the pastoral imperative, and finally, it would be true to say, for me, this is a deeply personal issue, and I'm not going to avoid that. People will say, well, obviously you're slightly biased. I grew up, I think probably completely ignorant of the fact that one could be gay, or what sexuality really was all about. It was so suppressed as an evangelical teenager. all the sermons or talks we had was about what you shouldn't do and what you can't do, as opposed to what a glorious thing God created in us, the desire to be loved and to love. And it wasn't until I was in my 20s when I first fell in love. And to my horror, that was with a woman. And it hit me like a train. I hope that each of you in this room has had the joy of falling in love. You've probably had your heart broken too. It's something you can't explain, you don't choose, it's completely, out of this world when you feel it. It's not something you switch on or off. You may have to choose to ignore it, obviously, if it's someone married, but it's an orientation that you have. Why do you fall for the people that you do? Why do we feel attracted to the people that we do? I'd suggest that's because we've been wonderfully and fearfully made, each uniquely by God, with a DNA that marks us out as different. But for me, it was a journey of a lifetime to understand that. It wasn't until I was 40, after my second breakdown, sadly, the second time in hospital, where my body had decided to literally start to pack up on itself. The stress of trying to carry that was so great that even my consultants couldn't quite understand what was happening. And in the end, both times the consultant came to say, "Jayne, you are carrying an extraordinary amount of stress. You need to be honest with us about what that's about." And as my aunt said to me after I came out, when she rang me, literally a couple of weeks after I'd written to her, to tell her the news about the fact I was in a wonderful relationship, she rang me, and I nearly didn't take the call because I really didn't know what she was going to say to me. And her opening words to me was, "Darling, I'm just ringing to apologise," which took me completely off guard. My mother had taken the news of me coming out quite badly, as frankly my family. It was a shock, and as evangelicals, it wasn't something that was easy to look at or even talk about. And I wasn't sure where my aunt was on this journey. "Darling, I'm ringing to apologise." And I said, "Apologise for what?" And she said, "Darling, we've always known, ever since you were a little girl. I just wish we'd had the courage to talk to you about it." And I remember a surge of emotion coming through me from great relief, but actually this was something that people had recognised in me for years, and great anger that no one had actually talked to me about it, because it had nearly cost me my life twice. The cost of silence. It's so much easier, isn't it? But the time for silence is over.